one time, California had the most diverse group of people in what is the United States right now, because it had a lot of land, they had clean water, they had. A lot of people didn't live in agriculture because they had permaculture, and that's what we're today. It's good to be being asked to come to the tables, and they're asking us what we're doing. It's really nice for them to understand that we knew what we were doing a long time ago, and we still want to share it with you guys. The community is us. I'm just happy that each and one of you guys here care about your future. That's what this man is going to try to present to you today. His name is John Pomeroy. Thank you immensely for being here and taking the interest in your lives in the future. Move.
Yeah, I get you.
We've got 29 people out in Zoom land right now. So hello to everybody in Zoom land. Thank you for your patience. We're attempting to make this work where we're in both worlds at once, the digital and IRL. But that means that we're going to have some tech challenges. So bear with us.
All right. Thank you guys so much for being here and for your patience while we work through all the technical stuff. My name is Johnny Pomeroy. This document was produced by Don Hankins. You might know him as a cultural fire practitioner and professor at Cal State Chico State. This was done with the Karuk tribe in association with the Karuk in the Klamath Basin. And you may know the Karuk because of their prevalence in cultural burning. If you read any New York Times articles or Washington Post articles about prescribed burning or cultural burning, odds are you're going to hear about Don Hankins, Bill Tripp, Margot Robbins, Elizabeth Azuz. These are the most credible people in that world. What we're talking about today, and I want to go through this presentation really quickly. I want to have a conversation with you all about this. Please make notes if you're here in person. This is all recorded, so you can go back and see it. But if you're here in person, Fusey Fire is where this document is linked, and you can go and read it. It's a 70-page document, and there's a lot of stuff in there. And we're talking about the barriers to cultural burning. And that was written in 2018. And if you compare what's in this document with the new laws that we're going to talk about today, AB 642, SB 332, and SB 926, those are all in direct response to this piece. So let's get to the presentation. So how many of y'all have seen this this land acknowledgement for Sierra College? Y'all should have seen it at some point, right? Yeah, there we go. Our land acknowledgement. So y'all seen that before? I'm just going to leave it up there while I talk about this. What good is it if I steal your car and then I tell everybody I stole your car, but I don't give it back? What good is that apology? What good is the acknowledgement that I stole your car? Worthless, right? Not only did I steal your car, but I drove it into the ground, right? I didn't change the oil. I raced around. I burned the clutch. I peeled the tires off, and then it's not working anymore. I'm gonna give it back to you. That's what's happening in the land back movement right now. These seriously degraded pieces of land that were stolen from the tribes are being returned at an exponential rate. You see it happening all over. In the last month, there's been hundreds of acres of California returned to the tribes. Butte Canyon returned to the Machuca last month. The Wyandotte territory, the island of Tuluwat in Humboldt, was returned by the Arcata City Council. If you just search land back California, you're going to find dozens of examples of that happening, and tens of thousands of acres. So that's a good start, right? We stole your car, we run you into the ground, and we give it back to you. So now we got to fix the car, and that's what all these rules are about. So how do I work this thing again?
You don't anymore.
Oh, I'm
Now tell
disconnected.
me what to do.
Oh, okay. So this is no longer
Yeah,
helpful.
sorry.
Okay. So we're going to talk about cultural or traditional burning. It's like what Ricky talked about: traditional ecological knowledge, indigenous management practices. These are all terms that academia has come up with to legitimize what we've been doing in California for 13,000 years. Documented, archaeologically documented years. Next slide, please. So the key points of what we're talking about here, I don't need to read all this stuff to you. You guys can see it. Burning season is not related to a calendar. The land tells us when it's appropriate to burn, not some arbitrary 3-county-wide burn ban. It's May 15th to whenever the first rain is. It's inappropriate. We had a big rain last month, and a couple days after, the land was saying this is the perfect time to burn. When's the best time to burn Scotch broom or star thistle? Before it goes to seed, right? You're going to go out there with your weed whacker and spread that seed all over the place? Or are you going to burn it before the seed drops? One return cycle of fire on our property, no more star thistle. Gone. Right? Because we burn it before it could spread its seed. Right? That's the benefit of good fire. Suppression is the new approach. We need to use good fire, low intensity, landscape scale, traditional burning. It's established science. It's finally caught up with traditional knowledge. Next slide, please. People get a laugh out of this one. 13,000 years. We have 12 in this slide. That little red zone right there, that's where we've been practicing suppression. That's where we've been putting fire out. 12,000 years and 117. Every single wildfire you've ever heard of, without exception, happened in that 117 years. I defy anyone in Zoom or here today to find an example of a cultural burn that went out of control. I defy you to find an example of a cultural burn that destroyed something that it wasn't meant to destroy. It's never happened. That's part of the reason why California feels safe to have these laws now. Next slide, please. All right, this picture's worth 1,000 words. Right? Do y'all have any questions from what you see in this photo? This is the proof in the pudding. Right? A wildfire went through this entire image. And what happened? Where it was only mechanically thinned. A lot of destruction, a lot of death, a lot of burn. What about where we use thinning and fire? Can't even tell a fire went through it, can you? Looks like a totally healthy ecosystem. And then where there's no treatment, scorched earth. It's like a nuclear bomb was dropped. This is the new norm in California. The Dixie Fire, there's 1 million acres that look like that. 1 million acres. Are you kidding me? The first time in history where a fire started in the Western Sierra and ended in the Eastern Sierra. It went over the ridge down into Nevada. That's never happened before. We need good fire on the land. We live in a fire-dependent ecosystem. Fire is not optional. We're either going to burn on our terms or its terms. Which would you prefer? Next slide, please. This is the norm, the new norm, high-intensity wildfire. Y'all can read, so I'm not going to go through all this stuff. But when you have a high-intensity fire come through, that ecosystem is done. It's got at least 10 years before it's going to recover. This is what grandmother talks about when she talks about the need for being respectful of fire. Fire is not just an element. It is an ancestor. It's a teacher. It's literally medicine for the land. This type of fire, not so much. Next slide, please. This is the kind of fire that we are advocating, that I've been using most of my life, that these guys have been using most of their life, that those 12,000 years of history were using most of their life. Low intensity fire. Low and slow. You got little flames, not a lot of heat, high volumes of consumption. After the fire moves through, there's an entire seed bank in the ground that's now activated. It depends on low, slow fire to release its seed from its shell. It will not sprout unless fire comes through. That's what fire dependency is. And without fire, when you're suppressing fire, all those fire-dependent flora and fauna are unable to perform and are outweighed by invasives, or what we like to call opportunists, right? They take advantage of the lack of fire in a fire-dependent ecosystem, and that's why we have all the Scotch broom and the deuce head and star thistles. Direct response to deprivation of fire. Next slide. All right, adoption and implementation. This is some of the nuts and bolts. Take a picture of the slide. Pretty simple. Fire doesn't care about your borders, doesn't care about your laws, doesn't care about your legislation. Fire's going to burn, whether we want it to or not. So we got to do it right. Fire dependency is non-negotiable. Say that with me. Fire dependency is non-negotiable, right? Let's do this. Next slide, please.
Did y'all get a chance to take a picture?
It's in the recording. All right, so that's what I'm going through fast. I want to get Q&A. I want to get engagement from you guys. So if you have any questions, just raise your hand. I'm going to go through this stuff really quickly. It's a lot of mumbo jumbo and laws and all that. AB 642 is a direct response to that document that I showed you in the beginning. Barriers to cultural burning. This assembly bill was written, drafted, and signed into law last year in September. And many of the CAL FIRE people that I've been fighting with my whole life didn't even know about this law. This tells you all about cultural burning, about partnering with Native American tribes, about new permitting systems. That's all mandates on CAL FIRE that they have yet to acknowledge. They have until July of next year to bring all these systems up to speed. And a lot of us are like, what's taking so long? How hard is it to do this? We have a $3 billion budget. You should be able to do this pretty quickly. All right? So Assembly Bill signed into law September 28, 2021. Next slide, please. Senate Bill 332, this is the big one. This is the one that gave us permission to do the burn that we did illegally on my property in Penn Valley in June. On Juneteenth, nonetheless, we did this in direct opposition to the burn ban. It's actually just a prescribed burning permit suspension. So your permit suspension has nothing to do with cultural burning. It has everything to do with pile burning. Pile burning is the problem. You have a big pile of mass. Where do you see that in nature? Where do you see a big pile of woody biomass in nature? You don't. And if you light it on fire and you got 15-foot flame lengths, guess what? You're going to get ember cats. What happens with ember cats? Those little sparks go over here, and they go into the bush, and then you got a wildfire. With the fire that we're talking about, cultural burning, this is low and slow, into the wind, down the hill. I've got an amazing time lapse at the end of this presentation to show you all. So you can see here, E and F are what give us exemptions from their 2 and 3, which is all the permitting stuff. I left it out because it's no longer relevant. We can now do this, we've set precedent, and it's now legal. The only opposition is educational, and that's why I'm here today. Because if each one of you will tell me that you'll go home and have these conversations with your friends, your family, your colleagues, your business partners, tell people about these laws. AB 642, SB 332, SB 926, next. This March 2022, this is CAL FIRE's own manual. Now remember, we burned in June. That was 3 months after this. So we showed CAL FIRE when they showed up to our burn saying we couldn't do what we're doing. We're like, the law says we can do it. Your own manual says we can do it. So why are you here? Ignorance is why they're there. Their heels are dug in about these laws, and they don't even know their own laws. So we presented this to them. They tried to give us tickets. We went to our arraignment at the Nevada County Courthouse, and they didn't even show up. Their own lawyers told them, no, Don't want to mess with these guys. They're doing it according to their own interpretations of these laws. This is on the CAL FIRE website. You can find this document on the CAL FIRE website. I put some key points from it just to bring you all up to speed to some of the most important parts of this document. Next, please. All right, so we're jumping around a little bit here. I want to give you kind of the time lapse of what's happened here. I summarized some of this already. May 20th is really important, the Forest Service. How many of y'all heard about the Calf Canyon fire? It went out of control in New Mexico. Largest wildfire in New Mexico history. You know what started it? Anyone? Huh? You think? Are you guessing? Are you reading? You see the quotes there? What do you think the quotes mean? Pile burning is not prescribed burning. And Forest Service had a 40-foot tall burn pile. It burned for 3 months. They left it unattended, and there was a high wind event that picked up that fire and took it into the brush, and then it joined with the Herman's Peak fire, which was caused by lightning. So now you got 2 fires that joined into one, and now you have a big problem. But it was not a prescribed fire. The Forest Service responded to it as if it were. They suspended all of their prescribed burning for 90 days while they did a review, and this is all happening at the same time that CAL FIRE is doing all this stuff with us, pushing back against their very own laws. Where's the logic here? Take a screenshot of that. It's all there. Next slide, please. This is the statement that Chief Randy Moore gave about the prescribed fire that went out of control. And the 90-day suspension was lifted on September 8th last month. Right? You can find this on their website, and you can also find a video of them talking about the release of the prescribed burning suspension. Next slide, please. All right. So 2 cultural fire practitioners, myself and Brendan Armstrong, conducted 2 safe, effective cultural burns, perfectly executed, perfect within prescription. You see pictures of it. It's beautiful. And afterward, he and I were removed from the Yuba Baron Burn Co-op, the prescribed burning association in Nevada County that's embroiled in financial stuff with Nevada County Fire Safe Council. All kinds of fraud allegations and all this mess. And we're like calling foul, like, hey, we don't want to be associated with those people. We want to be associated with the tribes. We want to be doing cultural burning. And we're going to show you how to do it. And because it was done in June after the burn ban, we were unsurreptitiously removed from the steering committee with no opportunity to defend our actions. And with no vote, just came from the top down. So that's where Tribe Cadre was born. TribeCadre.com is the cultural burning prescribed burn association that we're here promoting today. Again, you guys don't need me to read this stuff for you. I'm pretty sure college kids can read. Next one. Okay, so 926. This was the last big hurdle that we just passed. This was signed into law by Gavin Newsom last month. This is a mitigation fund. Statistically speaking, prescribed fires go out of control less than 1% of the time. All of those fires that have gone out of control are agency burns. They're trying to burn too much, too fast. That's not cultural burning. Like I said before, cultural burns don't go out of control. Statistically impossible. That's why they can do this law. So what do? This is just a summary of a couple of the most important parts. But they say, if you've shown due diligence, if you can show that you were not grossly negligent in your application of fire to the property that you're burning, then there's no liability. And that's the same thing with 332. 332 releases the landowner from liability. They're using good fire on the ground. 926 gives insurance. If there's a problem, if you burn your neighbor's fence, this fund will pay for that damage, as long as you're not grossly negligent. All right, next slide, please. All right, this is the last one. This is a time lapse of a cultural burn conducted at Klamath Treks in Karuk territory, in the Klamath River Basin. This is just outside of Orleans. And this is a property that has seen cultural burning consistently for 12,000 years. So this is a property that has a healthy fire return interval, to say the least. So what you're going to see here is textbook of what we want to see on the landscape. You see one single front of fire moving through the landscape, right? There's no big head fire, there's no huge flames. It's moving slow and low down the hill into the wind. Which way is the smoke going? Opposite direction the fire is going. What does that mean? That means it's moving slowly across the land. Now, if we go over here and light the fire, and it goes uphill with the wind, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to run. So what would you prefer? This kind of fire, or what we've been experiencing for the last 100 years? Kind of a rhetorical question, right? So that concludes the presentation. This is our new website. We just put the landing page up so you can sign up for the newsletter. We need people to be engaged. We need these conversations to be happening every day in every walk of life. We're coming into the winter. We're going to have a lot of time to prepare for the burn season, right? When it's 100 degrees for 3 weeks in a row, that's the problem. You get a fire started somewhere where you don't want it, guess what? It's not going to stop. So we're going to do this work, we're going to continue doing this work, and we need your help. That concludes the presentation. Did you want to say something before Q&A? So you want to say something at the end? But very end. Okay.
I missed both of you on the recording, so I don't know.
That's probably good.
Okay.
You're not supposed to record ceremony.
Perfect. I
That's
did that on purpose.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys were, wait, it was seen on Zoom, though, just not recorded?
It was seen on Zoom, but not
Okay,
recorded.
good. That's exactly the way it should be. Yes.
And my question is, with these catastrophic fires that happen, especially in the last 10 years, is it possible to do directly burning or visual burning to keep the damage down?
Oh, that's good. That's actually a part that I like to repeat.
I would say, will you repeat the question for the folks on Zoom, please?
Yeah. She says she works in ag. She's a professor here, teaching an ag class. Yeah, she's asking about returning good fire to pasture land, to farmland.
To any of the catastrophic fires that happen, like the Dixie fire, for example. Now, we manage that.
So the question is about catastrophic fire, specifically the Dixie fire, and whether these kinds of cultural practices will help in the remediation.
Yeah, if it's possible to start that process, or that's a discussion going forward to management.
Yeah, it absolutely is. We actually wrote a $2 million grant from USDA. We're supposed to find out next month if we got it specifically for that question, for forest remediation in the burn scar and the Dixie fire. There's a cultural resources assessment that has to be made, EIR, the Environmental Impact Review. Those things happen. We go in with a mill to take down the burnt logs that are standing with matchsticks, basically, and we mill those into usable lumber to help rebuild the areas that were affected by the wildfire. everything besides the lumber stays on site. So everything, all the mill ends, all the sawdust, the bark, all that stuff, that gets made into biochar. So then we go in with our botanist crew and we replant, reseed, everything. Then we take that charcoal that we made from all the slash, all the stuff that's not useful in lumber, and we put that over the seed bank. That protects the seed bank. And then when the rains come, those little seedlings have a chance to grow for a little bit before they're eaten by birds or deer or whatever. And by doing that, you're almost guaranteeing a restart of that system. So with good fire, healthy return interval, and all the reseeding efforts, you're talking a 2 to 5 year restoration process, which is pretty awesome.
So, talked a lot about like how what's happening in California specifically, and from my understanding, I think the like catastrophic burning problem is particularly worse in California than other states because of the climate here, right? But I'm just curious if there's like a similar effort happening on the federal level, or also in like neighboring Western states that are also having like fire issues.
Very interesting, good question. Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, Bureau of Indian Affairs, National Parks, they all have prescribed burning objectives. The issue is the barriers to those. And it's really an educational one. There's still institutional racism that comes into play. You know, Native Americans couldn't possibly know what they're doing. They're just savages, right? But that's literally still a problem. So education is the only hurdle that we have left right now. And the Forest Service in particular made a big mistake on the mosquito fire that they've made historically lots of times. But because of the zeitgeist where we are in this moment, it's actually going all the way to DC. So in your land acknowledgement for Sierra College, it talks about the United Auburn Indian Community. Their tribal historic preservation officer is a man named Matt Moore. He has a whole crew of red card certified, credentialed, permitted, indigenous sawyers, right? These are fire crew that go into a landscape and with respect to the cultural artifacts that are there, do work to prevent wildfire from damaging those sacred sites. And when Incident Command switched from CAL FIRE to Forest Service, they were no longer allowed into their ancestral homeland. So this man is an actual tribal historic preservation officer for a federally recognized tribe, United Auburn Indian Community. Him and his licensed crew are prevented from going to their landscape, to their ancestral homelands, to protect their cultural resources. And not only were they not permitted to go in, but dozer lines were dug directly through their cultural site and destroyed 10,000-year-old granite holes and all kinds of other cultural resources in the traditional village site. So, needless to say, they were a little upset, and they went all the way to DC, and they're dealing with it now. So that addresses your question a little bit. Any follow-ups? Did I get it all?
Yeah, I guess like are there any like actual laws like pending even for like federal allowed?
Yeah, I mean all the laws in California are really precedent setting.
Yeah,
So
makes sense.
yeah.
And they're all like fairly new, so do you think it's gonna like become more like recognized?
That's up to you.
Yeah.
That's all y'all. Right? Are you gonna sit by idly and watch and hope that the agencies do the right thing? Or are you gonna start your own local prescribed burn association and mandate that cultural burning be front and center in that conversation? Engage the tribes whose lands you're burning. Because land acknowledgements are great, but doing the work on the land, that's where land back really happens. Right? What is hashtag land back? Have you guys heard of this? No? That's the Indigenous-led campaign to return land to Indigenous stewardship across Turtle Island, so-called North America. And this is what we were talking about earlier, with all of the land that's coming back into Indigenous stewardship, bringing the land back into balance. That's what land back means to me and a lot of the people that I work with. So fire, like I said, is medicine for the land. So if you really want to bring the land back to its pre-colonial splendor, fire-dependent ecosystem, that means fire needs to be on the ground.
John, sorry. I'm gonna jump in. We've got a bunch of questions coming in from the chat, but I want to throw one of them in, particularly from what you just said, which is, what are the Amber would like to know, what are the eligibility and training requirements for a cultural burn practitioner?
That is an excellent question, and one that we are still in heated debate about. The California Governor's Wildfire Resiliency Task Force just met in Nevada County for their second statewide convention. Myself and Brendan, my colleague, were able to corner Joe Tyler, who is the director of CAL FIRE, the #1 guy, the head honcho, the big cheese. And we went up to him and we were like, our local unit here, which is Nevada, Placer, and Yuba counties, they came out in full force and told us that we couldn't do the work that we've been doing forever in conjunction with the new laws. And they wanted to have an argument with us about what these laws look like. Joe Tyler then asked me if I'm the guy that had the burn in Penn Valley on June 19th. And I was like, yeah, that was me. And he turned around and walked away. And his #2 and #3 guy started having an argument about it, about the interpretation of SB 332, which clearly delineates what a cultural fire practitioner is and what cultural fire is, both of which we qualify for under their law. And so they try to backpedal, they try to manipulate our words and figure it out. No, it didn't work. So we are able to do this work as cultural fire practitioners with the recognition of other cultural fire practitioners, as it has been an indigenous tradition in California since time immemorial. There is no permits, there is no licenses, there is no CAL FIRE. There is a group of people that knew what they were doing, and they acknowledge when someone else knows what they're doing, right? And so if I want to be acknowledged as a cultural fire practitioner, I have to help Windwalker burn his land, I have to help Ricky burn his land, and I have to go somewhere else and burn with someone who has different traditions than I do, so I can learn from them how they do it. And then once I work with them, they can acknowledge me. And then I have a list of acknowledgments. So if I have written consent from the landowner, written consent from the tribe whose ancestral land we're burning, there are no permit requirements. Anyone can do it as long as they go through those channels. And that's what tribe is about. If you guys want to do this work, you're tired of dealing with all the bureaucracy and permitting and all that, join tribe. You're going to be connected with a group of people that are doing this work and will be able to do the work for you and your own properties. Yes.
Okay, I'm a native fire practitioner. And work over in attending Garden Woodland. I've been all over. And the problem with what you're talking about is the SB
332?
Yeah, it's wide open. And it's for the native people. It's for the native people to build that understanding. I don't think it should be business side trying to develop that understanding.
Great.
But it's the native people within, because I work with a fire chief, on what we do. And every time we go somewhere, I go to the homeland people. But I don't make it my business, to go and do those things. They call me, and if they need help, then we help. But we're not there to try to make money out of this. We're there to establish a group of people within their area. We're not there to make the business out of it.
That's right.
We're doing the work as a native person. I can sit here and tell you I'm a native person and I live my life as a native person, even though I live in the state. I'm an East Sun Mayu whose family escaped the gold rush genocide. One of the only 12 that ever survived it. And so we still have the knowledge of fire, but I'm seeing a pointing or trying to get people to go out and find Native people and do the fire for them like they still can't do it. You know, it's us Native people. I know Don Nicholas. You know, we're with them for a while. You know, and you know, we do all this, the burning, along with the Native people themselves. You know, but I don't like to call anybody into it until they know that person. If it's their friends, then I trust them and who they bring forward.
Yeah, I mean,
other community members.
yeah, there's a big learning curve that has to happen. There's a huge engagement piece that we're struggling with. Myself, burning illegally as long as I have been, I would never have come out of the dark, literally out of the dark, burning at night, if it weren't for these laws. And because I present white, I use my privilege and power that comes with that in this nonsensical colonial system to drive these conversations. These men I've worked with on our territory where we live, and our goal is to replicate this where you are and where everyone else is by finding the resources that are available and helping those interested in doing this work in a good way, do it in a good way. And this isn't about money. Tribe is not about money. You're not going to see
it
it.
is in a way because you're only working with Native people who have money.
No, that's not true.
Not all Native people have money.
This is a 100% volunteer organization.
Mhm.
Myself, Brendan, we don't make money from this. This is
Talk about that. What I'm talking about. Looking for the Native people who have the money that can take care of their money.
money's a big part of the problem. We're trying to work around that. And by doing this work volunteer, then money doesn't become an issue. That was one of the big problems that Brendan and I had with the Yuba Fair Burn Co-op. Because all they wanted to talk about was grants. How do we get money? What are we going to do? How do we get funding? You need a big lighter and a bucket of water. And if the healthy ecosystem, the fire return interval is already in place, you don't even need the water. I burn my property every 2 to 3 years. I use water. I start the fire at the top of the property, and it burns down the hill into the wind. And then when it gets to the bottom where my animals have cut a line, where they walk along the fence line, it goes out. I don't have to use water. Right? That is the work that needs to be done. We have to restore a healthy fire return interval on properties. CAL FIRE says they want to burn 1 million acres a year in California with prescribed fire. How do we do that? It's certainly not a top-down approach. It's bottom up. We get 1 million homeowners to burn an acre. Guess what? There's 1 million acres. And if I burn my property, then my neighbor, not a neighbor anymore. When the fire comes to my property, it goes out. So work needs to be done. And the new law says that cultural fire practitioners can do it without oversight. And so that's what we're advocating for. So please join us. We could really use your expertise and your knowledge and your connections. The biggest hurdle we have is getting cultural fire practitioners to come out and advocate for it. Because what's happened historically when a Native American puts their head up and makes a stink? Right? Genocide is not a joke. That's real historical facts in California. And those repercussions are still very much a part of our problem, which is why I feel the need to have these conversations and to use my power and privilege to do it.
Well, we're doing a fall burn with the CAL FIRE group that we work with over at Cache Creek Conservancy at the 10 Garden. So anybody who's invited to join us.
Can you put that in the chat? Is the chat part of the recording?
Call Cache Creek Conservancy.
Yeah, Cache Creek Conservancy.
Yeah.
CACHE Creek Conservancy. Yes, thank you. I'm definitely going to try and make it. I hope my calendar allows it. Yes, sir.
Why?
Yes. The initial
Where is the Tri-Rivers?
almost every watershed in the world has 3 rivers associated with it. Right? So we did that to be a general catch-all term so that this thing can proliferate. So no matter where you are, there's a watershed that you're a part of. Doesn't matter where you are. Even in the desert, there's a watershed. Right? In those watersheds, there are 3 rivers. By delineating those 3 rivers, you're making a very clear announcement of where you're working, where you're burning. Yeah. So the 3 that we started with were Yuba, Bear, and American. So those watersheds feed the Sacramento watershed as a whole, and they're also connected to the watersheds north of us with the Feather and the McLeod and the Clement, right? And south of us with the Consomme and the Tolome and all the other rivers. So there's 3 rivers all over the place. So we came up with this. We really like the acronym for one, right? Join the tribe. And we also knew that every watershed has 3 rivers. So we want to see this action proliferate across California, Turtle Island, and beyond. Yes, sir.
So, with these new laws, how does that affect SPI? Because SPI has quite a bit of forest land.
Talking about Sierra Pacific,
Yeah.
that's a privately held land, and they have the right to do whatever they want with it according to these new laws. They have written consent of the landowner and approval from their local tribe, then SB 332 applies directly to them. Yeah. 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 They were instrumental in the law being passed. They need to be able to do this land to preserve their timber, right? Look what happened in the Dixie Fire. SPI lost, I don't even remember how many trees, like 5 million or something. It's crazy. Yeah. Any more questions on?
Yes, there are more on chat. Let's see. I think some of them you have addressed. That's an extreme close-up. You guys don't need to see that. Okay. So a comment/question from Gunner. I have been working at a site called Bushy Lake near Cal Expo in Sacramento. We've been in the process of restoring the area with California native, culturally significant, and fire-resilient vegetation. Our site is very prone to the increasingly intense fire regime that is developing on the American River and so burned last year. Our fire-resilient vegetation did its job and came back, and was back quickly outcompeted by the vetch and other aggressive species because of how intense the fire was, burning down into the soil in many places. We believe the Metro Fire Department did a poor job of handling that fire, to say the least. I think my site supervisor would be very interested in introducing cultural burning to this site. How could we go about this?
Yeah. Joint tribe. Yeah.
Actually, I know the area, and I've worked with those guys a lot, and this will be taken care of. I'm glad that you said that.
Okay.
My name is Ricky Brown. Michelle and I.
All right, Gunnar, did you catch all that?
Yes, thank you. That's good to know.
All right, you said yes, thank you. That's good to know. Awesome. Nice.
Yeah, so from my understanding, it was like been told in like my ecology classes that these areas that are having that like extreme loss of vegetation where like the tall trees are getting destroyed, it's because of like the buildup of like the ladder pools, right? Which is like those like non-fire resistant trees that have been like allowed to accumulate, little trees and brush and stuff, that have been allowed to accumulate because there hasn't been fires in these areas for so long. So I'm just curious if that, like, and that has happened like all over the Sierra. You have these huge areas where there's all this fuel built up. Like, can that even be solved, like with prescribed burning, or like, is it just like inevitable that it's gonna like torch everything if you like put that on fire? I guess, does that make sense?
If you just lit it on fire and hope for the best, yeah, good problem. But you got to go in, you got to do fuel management, right? And the resources that are being allocated right now by CAL FIRE and PG&E specifically to deal with vegetation management, they're doing it totally wrong. They're creating a worse problem. They're going under their power lines and clearing all the trees. What they're doing is creating a hot spot. They're removing shade. They're putting all that fuel that was underneath their power lines in nature in a pile underneath. So when the wildfire moves through, all that mulch catches on fire, and guess what? mulch has a very high residency time. So there's fire in that mulch for months, literally months. If there's any high wind event, that mulch is going to pick up and throw sparks, and there'll be another fire started, right? So they're literally just kicking the can down the road, burning thousands of gallons of diesel in the process, and it's creating a huge problem. To answer your question more specifically, though, we take hand crews, we go in, we remove that ladder fuel, we make biochar with it, we leave that biochar in piles around the property, and then we burn, right? You're able to burn off the surface fuels. You're not dealing with burn piles that will catch on fire when you go through the burn, and those create problems, right? By removing that fuel and creating a valuable resource, making sure it stays on site. Then after you burn, you can throw your seeds, cover them with the biochar, and if fire moves across biochar, guess what? It doesn't ignite. It doesn't ignite. Biochar is not the same as mulch, even though it looks like it, right? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Fuels management, short
Right.
answer.
So that's
Yeah.
key there.
Hand crews.
Yeah.
We don't need bulldozers, we don't need tractors, we need people going in there and diligently dealing with these things.
What about like, I know like people like using like a masticator on their properties, like really common. How does that relate to fire?
I mean, to me, that's really destructive. I don't like big, heavy equipment. I like to go in and be hands-on. And we spent 120 years degrading our environment. We can take a little time and do it right, can't we? Right? We don't need to rush this. We were doing it right for 13,000 years. We've been doing it wrong for 120. We can take time and use slow, low fire to do the work that needs to be done. We don't have to just rip off 1,000-acre head fires because we're worried about wildfire, right? There's a nuance that cultural fire has a unique position to answer. Yes.
Instead of burn and slow burn that you showed, it was already low. It was already in control. So that's why that slow burn worked that you filmed. But that's not what the environment looks like. You know, it doesn't look like that at all. They've taken away the native people who have added all at a slow burn style. So right now it's going out of control. So it's like every spot needs to be checked over for what you need to take out and chunk. You can use it to chunk other things that need to be burned, but then you got to know what to chunk.
Right.
You know, and so there's a lot of cultural knowledge that is missing in everything when it comes to looking at the environment. You know, you got to clear it out, chunk it, get it ready by doing smaller burns outside of that. Then you got to come in and do it. It's in steps. It has to be prepared. It has to be chunked. And then you can start with fires. Right? You just can't go in and burn and think that you're going to have a low intensity fire.
No.
Because it's like,
Fuels management. Very
Yeah.
important. Very important.
yeah.
Yeah. Fuels management looks very different for cultural fire than it does for scrap fire in general. Not just going in and ripping off huge sections of land, taking it slow and low and doing it right.
So you're saying, I really like the idea that, really open corners good for an acre, don't need acres. But it seems like, how do you get over that hurdle where it's accessible practice, right? Where 1 million people could pick it up. Like what is it? Right?
Fair college, education, bringing it to the schools, demonstrating it, joining your local prescribed burn association, seeing the difference between prescribed fire and wildfire. When you see fire like what we did with, slow and low across the landscape, once you experience that, you can't unsee it. There's no danger. You're in complete control. You have a perimeter around the unit that you're burning with a fire nozzle every 50 feet. Right? You're following the fire as it moves slowly. If you're not bored while you're doing this work, you're doing it wrong. Right? I'm serious. If you're not bored while you're doing it, you're doing it wrong. If you're like, fire. No, you're doing it wrong. People will always do that. A fire moves through the land and it climbs a tree. Everybody freaks out. But guess what? That tree is supposed to burn. If it's cat facing, if there's a bunch of pitch dripping down the bark, that tree is unhealthy. That pitch is an invitation to the medicine. Fire comes in, it burns into that pitch and destroys the illness. We burned a tree for almost 8 hours straight. We're like, there's no way that tree is going to survive, right? This spring it came back in full green. The whole inside is burned out, but the whole tree canopy is green and healthy. And it was sickly. It had powdery mildew, had all kinds of mistletoe in the branches, and one long sustained burn brought it back to life. It's incredible.
When you burn, never remember when you burn. Every time you burn, there's going to be a lot of stuff out there. And what's good about burning, though, because you get all the bad stuff out there, you got ticks, different bugs and stuff, and it kills it all. But it's really not hurting, nature itself. Because nature knows it's time to take stuff away. And when there's too much overgrown, nature's going to take it out no matter what. You know? So when you burn, you got a lot of poison oak, a lot of poison ivy, a lot of plants that you never thought you'd have on your property. They came in, or say somebody did some logging or whatever. Because when you come with logging equipment, it does bring seeds in on the tracks. So when the seeds comes in off a tractor or a skidder or something, they don't clean them. It just drives it in there and then it picks up all. That's why a lot of these places you see where they log is what they brought in. It didn't grow there. It wasn't natural.
That's another reason why we don't like using big equipment. And it's just not natural.
I know when we used to log, we used to tell we can't. We got 10 on equipment. We were to private property to log it because they didn't want all that stuff coming back. And that's what we did, was clean our equipment and stuff. We wanted to do it. And we did that. And when he got done and logged it, we didn't cut the only bad trees and took some brush up that needed to come off. It was good, so we came back the next year and we burned it for him. And it burned pretty good. It didn't hurt anything. It all came back nice and green. We got it all happy about it. So it just takes a little time and looking into what you're going and what's going to happen. You don't know until you get out there.
That's right. Hands on.
Yep. Then you also got to talk about culture. So when you're creating
Wait, can you speak up? I'm having a hard time.
Hazel.
Hazel beans?
So the hazel is
Sure.
that
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it. The goal of today's conversation is to talk about the new laws and to get cultural fire back in the public discourse. But that's exactly right. The reason for these things is for preserving your hunting and fishing grounds, for preserving your cultural resources, your basket making materials, your acorns, your pine nuts. All those things benefit from healthy fire. The smoke that's generated is directly responsible for the acorn weevil leaving an ecosystem, right? So you don't have little holes in your acorns with a bunch of little grubs inside. Beetles, right? Pine bark beetles, right? Killing wide swaths of the forest, right? We went in there and we logged the whole area, but we didn't restore the balance. We didn't replant all the things that we took out to get those logs. We just replanted the Douglas fir because that's the one that had value for our lumber. And so we created a stand of monocrop that's just waiting to burn like crazy. Historically, before settlers arrived, there were 20 to 25 trees per acre. There's now 200 plus on many parts of California's landscape. There was 1 or 2 snags per acre, right? A standing dead tree. All the woodpeckers and squirrels and stuff live in those dead trees. There's now dozens per acre. Those are fire magnets. If a fire gets into a snag, you guarantee it's going to go all the way up and fall, right? So we got to deal with all that stuff before putting fire on the ground.
I'm going to bring it back to the chat again.
Yes.
Amber has a comment for folks in the audience, because everyone in chat has already read it, but Cache Creek Conservancy is having a good fire tour at Calcan on November 13th. So if you want to look that one up, they're doing a tour. And then she has a question. For those who are interested in learning more and positing themselves to engage deeper with cultural burning, does Tribe recommend training programs like treks, since there is no formal course or field work to become a CBP?
Yes, 100%. Trex is as close as we've come to doing it right. It's still,
That's our program.
there you go.
10, 11, 12, sorry.
There's two Cache Creek?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, same one. So it's 11, 12, and 13.
And the 10 Gather Garden is all natural, native grown plants that we've had over 20 years. It's always planted from empty soil. And so everything we burn is culturally significant. And it's fascinating because I feel like after we leave and it's all good plants, that I feel like I was walking in a smudge bowl. You know, it's just the greatness of the fuel of the burn of the plants that are usable, culturally usable, that really make a big difference in this too. So I work with UC Davis, and we have a class there called Keepers of the Flame. And that's where we get most of our people, and they get certification in the college. Yeah, and it started there with us, and now we have a class.
Excellent.
Yeah, and so those people keep coming back, and they're spreading out to different places, learning how to do this.
How do we support?
Yeah, learning about the culture first.
Yeah.
Because by learning about the culture, then you're understanding what kind of zone you're in, how to take care of that oak tree, how to take care of that Douglas fir, those plants. You're learning what native flora and fauna are. That's what we really need to know. And reconsider making your houses out of wood, because you just built yourself into the box. You know. So anyway, that's kind of like what we talk about. We have all the different presenters go there. All the native people. We do birds in Mariposa, wood trucks, and food while you work there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's a class that is really well.
It's as close to the best education that you can get in Trex. My only issue with it is still agency-led. There's still a lot of PPE and fire suppression mindset associated with it. And I really want to see that go to the side. I'm not saying that suppression isn't necessary. We have infrastructure that needs to be protected. We have to make sure that wildfire doesn't become a problem. We have to put it out when it's burning really crazy. But that can't be the way we center our approach to fire, right? It cannot be a suppression-centered approach. It has to be proactive versus reactive. So that's our hope with Tribe. So I reached out to anyone who will listen. I've talked to Bill Tripp, I've talked to Margot Robbins, I've talked to Elizabeth Belzou, I've talked to Matt Moore. We have conversations regularly. I've talked to the lead forester for California, Steve Zimney. He works with USDA and NRCS. They are actively pursuing efforts to fund cultural fire on the ground. So that's a way where we can reward the people who are doing good work by bringing in the education and the resources and the economic incentives to do this work. So, other questions? Yeah.
Yes, there are more questions, but I know that we're getting close on time. So I want to say a big thank you before, and then we can keep going. But I want to say a big thank you to the Ecos Club for making this happen, and to Juan Barkley, our treasurer, who got connected with Diana Tiger, who is a counselor here on campus, who got us connected to you. So thank you to everybody for keep spreading the word, and let's figure out how maybe we can move from having UC Davis having this class to Sierra College also having this class.
Talk about that program and brought me here in the first place. Has there been any further conversation about it? About the California Tribal Unilateral Apprenticeship Program?
Not yet.
Okay. So y'all can drive that conversation too. This is an Earn As You Learn program. California just adopted it as official community college curriculum. So if Sierra College adopts the curriculum and presents these classes, you'll be able to learn about all this stuff while your tuition and books are paid for, while your field work is paid at $18 an hour. And when you finish your AA, there's a $30 an hour job guarantee with benefits. That's called the CTUAP, California Tribal Unilateral Apprenticeship Programs. And I came here with MK Youngblood from Calterra.org to present that program, and that's how I was invited to talk about the cultural fire that we're working with in association with that program. So yeah. California Tribal Unilateral Apprenticeship Program, CTUAP, and it's Calterra, CALTERRA.org. That's open to anyone. It's designed with Indigenous folks in mind, but it's open to anyone. You care for your future, then. Gotta do the work. Nature needs to burn. Let's burn it. Any other questions in the audience? Zoom? Yeah.
Can you tell the time maybe what some of the best practices, maybe in their town, village, and then the fire chief, how all
Came in late, right?
Trying to say something.
Yeah, can we go back to that slide? I think it's number 5.
Is that it?
Yeah, wow, that's
But
good.
not that one. An actual city or town. Could you share this with me once, sorry?
A city or town
Yeah,
that
or village.
they burn?
Where there was like, they did work burning or in advance and a fire area.
I'm sorry. What's that? Is it Australia? Oh no, we were talking about the Kalahari, right? When the tribesmen in the Kalahari would see a fire, a lightning strike, they'd see fire on the horizon. They see all the smoke. So what do? Protect their village. They light a fire where they're standing, right? The fire moves out in a radius away from their village, right? Then when the big fire comes, it meets the area that's already been burned and goes out. Start a fire where you are and follow it. Then you're not going to get burned. Any other questions on there?
No, they're done. All right. So
We didn't need to see. Can you still hear us?
I got to change the mic. Hold on. Let's see if it changed over.
If you sign up for Tribe's website, we'll be engaged in conversation. We're welcome to send as many questions as you want our way. So a couple of quick things that came up in chat were, it might be worth mentioning that a prayer was still presented in support of this presentation for those seeing the recording out of context. Are we getting feedback now?
We don't film ceremony ever.
Yes. I think you answered this, but what determines where you place good fire? What is the ideal frequency of good fire on the landscape? That came early and you addressed it, but.
Most of California has a 3 to 5 year fire return interval. So 3 to 5 years is the general answer, but every microclimate is different. The higher you get in elevation or the closer you get to the coast, the higher the fire return interval. Like the Santa Cruz Redwoods have like a 25-year fire return interval, and that's why the fire was so intense there recently. It hasn't been so long since there was good fire.
Did you get that, Molly? There's a lot of folks saying thank you, very interesting, informative, love the perspective, doing the right thing for the land. Lots in that.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, with that, we'll officially adjourn and end the Zoom, and then folks can, if you can stick around, folks can
Yeah, I'll
stick
stay
around.
around. How long do we do that?